Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the third webinar in this series looking at desktop container technology. If you watched the last webinar, then this week's speakers won't need much of an introduction, as I'm joined once again by ScottLogic's CTO, Colin Eberhardt, and Technical Principal, Mark Jose. If you missed any of the previous webinars in this series, you can head to the ScottLogic YouTube channel or stick around till the end and I'll include a link to our website where you can watch all of the previous recordings and sign up for the next ones. I've also put a link in the chat box for the next webinar in this series, so I hope that you'll be able to join us for that. If you have a question for Mark or Colin, get them into the question box and we'll take as many as we can at the end. And if you'd like a copy of today's slides, you can download these in the handout section. Now, as I mentioned last time, Mark will be showing some real code on today's webinar. So if you need to adjust your screen size, you can do this by moving the slidey bar between the two screens. So without any more delay, let me pass you over to today's speakers, starting with Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Thanks for the introduction. I'll keep it brief before passing over to Mark. So this webinar is part of a mini series that we've created, which is looking at creating an integrated desktop ecosystem where for businesses, it allows them to easily deploy and integrate their applications alongside those of third-party vendors. And for users, it allows them to seamlessly integrate tools to support bespoke user-oriented workflows. Clearly, one of the great challenges to achieving this is the legacy technologies which typically sit on users' desktops. So we're looking at practical steps that you can take to free yourselves from the constraints of legacy to allow old and new to live side by side. So Mark has been putting together some demos using various vendor products, and today he's going to be looking at Glue42. So I'll pass you over to Mark.
Thanks, Colin. Hi, everybody. Great. Let's talk about building desktop applications with Glue42. I guess I'll caveat this for anybody who didn't join the previous webinars with a lot of this is my opinion and an experience of using the product. Some things may be the right way to do things, some things may be the wrong way to do things. The things that I'm going to show you today are things that have worked for me and the teams I've worked with. So let's move on. Cool. So I guess anybody who joined the previous webinar will have seen this picture. This is all of the things, in my opinion, that come into play when looking at applications on the desktop. The things in blue are the things I'm probably going to talk about at some point today. The things in yellow I'll possibly talk about today, and the things in orange are Colin alluded to legacy applications. So a lot of the demonstrations you see and a lot of the products that you see in the space tend to focus on how to build a new thing using this product. I guess that's not the norm. The majority of projects we see are how do I get my old thing moved into this new thing, or how do I get my old thing to work with my new thing, and I guess that's what I guess Colin alluded to. So in particular, I'll be talking about these particular features of Glue42. So I think I'll talk a little bit about single page applications. I'll talk a little bit about progressive web app. Actually, I've left it in red on this slide, but I will cover a little bit of progressive web app. And that'll be with regards to Glue42's core product, which I'll show you a little bit of in a second. I'll talk about the browser probably quite a lot. The Glue42 gateway is essentially the message bus. I'll talk about that quite a bit. Desktop services, custom integrations, I'll probably cover. I've left it in blue, but I'll probably cover some of that stuff. There's going to be a lot of focus on the HTML container. There's going to be a lot of focus on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all of web tech, because that's what this is pretty much about, migrating your legacy tech to web tech. And I'll probably mention some of the third-party integrations. Glue42 has quite a lot of third-party integrations. They integrate natively with Excel, Outlook, Salesforce, Bloomberg, to name a few. And then I'll definitely be talking about sort of legacy applications. I'm a .NET developer, so all legacy I'll talk about is .NET. Obviously, there are options with Java and a number of other legacy tech. So I guess, yeah, there we go. These are the things I'll mostly concentrate on. I'm going to start in the same place I started at the last webinar. I think it's important. I've done it already, but actually it's important for you to look at. I'm going to start with a really simple web application. And the tools I'll be using for this, this is just my particular setup. I'm going to use Chrome DevTools. I'm going to use VS Code because I like it. Atom, whatever else you want to use, Eclipse, all of those other tools are available. I'm going to use the live server extension for VS Code. If you've not come across that, it's really useful when trying to just run up static HTML pages. Node.js obviously with npm and Git. I'm probably not going to do much Git today. I'll try and avoid that, but it's there. That's my normal stack. So a simple application looks a little bit like this. You have the application, the actual, that's where the brunt of the work is, building these things. By far the biggest piece of work to be done is to build the application. And no matter all of these containers, Glue42 included, there'll be some work to do in Glue42. But actually you've still got to build the new application. If you're going to take your old thing and have a new thing, the old thing's done, there might be some maintenance work to do, there might be some retrofits to do to the old application, but actually the new thing, you've got to build it, and that's always the bulk of the work. So that's your single page application in this case. It'll be built on HTML5, new HTML standards with the new web APIs that are available in HTML5. And I'm going to just talk about it in the browser for now, using Glue42, some Glue42 integrations. So let's jump to that demo, and I'm going to juggle a few screens here, so I'll apologize now. And like Claire said, if you can't read any code, please pop something in the chat, and I'll try and make the font bigger. So let's drag this up here, and let's pick a really simple app. So this is a simple app. I'd never expect anybody to produce code like this in any sort of production environment for any of these examples, to be fair. But this is all of my script bundled into an HTML file. So as you can see, it's a very, very simple file with some HTML up here. And the script included in line. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in the latest Glue42 UMD package. And then I'm going to scroll right down to here, and the very first thing that we actually do is initialize Glue42. That will then set up some options, and it will initialize it. And when it's initialized, I also need to add some event listeners so when I click, it will list the applications that Glue42 currently knows about. Well, how's that going to work? Let's launch this first. In a simple web browser using Live Server. So if you've not used Live Server before, it's an extension of VS Code. I can launch that, and that's popped up on my other screen. So let me bring it over here. So this is a pretty simple app. It's not really doing much. And obviously, web development world, we've got DevTools, which is really helpful. So this didn't work. It's failed on a few things because it's not running in a Glue environment. It's just running as a web app. And if I click list applications, it's not going to do much. But it's a very, very simple app. So how do we start Glue42? So let me quickly whiz back to my slides. Again, I'll apologize because I'm juggling screens. My slides are, schoolboy error. I have probably just shut my slide window. Let me reopen my slide window. I do apologize. There's always something with these things, isn't there? Sorry about that. Okay, so in order to get Glue42 running, there's an npm package. I'm using the command line interface for this, so we need to install that globally. Well, you don't have to install it globally. I've installed it globally, and for any particular project, you can initialize that project with a Glue-C init, and then you can serve it. Let me show you what that looks like. Juggling my windows again. So I have a thing here. Let me close these down. I have a folder here called Glue environment. And in here, I have the output from the Glue init function. So it pulls a bunch of required dependencies in here. What that allows me to do is from the Glue command line, I can go to my Glue environment folder, and I can do, I'm typing in the bottom right-hand box here. Let me just make that bigger. Sorry. Let me kill this one. Just that's the only thing we're looking at. So in here, I can do Glue-C serve. And what that's going to do is that's going to look at some config that I set up before, which I'll show you in a second. And it's going to spin up a Glue environment. Now this is Glue core. And Glue core is fully open source, so you can go and check that out whenever you want. So I have a server now listening on port 4343. Let me pull this across here, and if I type in localhost 343, I can. So it's not going to find anything running there right now. So we need to look at what that actually served up. So if I look in my Glue dev config, Glue core comes with a server, development server. And what I've done is I have added a few apps in here. So the one we're talking about right now is my simple app. And what that's going to do is that's going to route /simple app to port 5500, which is my live server. Live server runs on port 5500 and will serve any files out of the folder simple app. And then in my Glue config, I can then register that app as a local application. And because it's being proxied through the Glue development server on port 4242, I can then add the app using this URL here. So 4242 simple app. So now that's done, I need to make sure that this is running. And then if I go back to my little window here where we typed that in, if I type in /simple app here, it's the app that we saw before. And now if I F12, we don't see the errors because it's running in a Glue environment, and I can do list applications, and it will now show me the applications I've registered locally, which is great. They're all here. And because I'm running my live server, I can actually click launch on one of these, and that's going to launch me another app, and that's actually launching through Glue42. Now these are just apps running in a browser. They're launching in a new browser window. This is great, and actually I think with this Glue have really embraced the sort of the progressive web app. So I guess my approach has always been to, with this, has been to build web, because building web is less cumbersome than building native. And actually, I really want to do that in the browser. I like doing that in the browser. It's something I'm used to doing in the browser. And I've got all the browser tools available, which means using this progressive web app approach and using Glue core, I can do in the same way I would build any other web app. But what happens when I want to start using some of the more complex functionality? Let me go back to my slides. So I guess building a progressive web app, you wouldn't want a single HTML file. It would become unwieldy and impossible to use. And most people use a framework. So the framework I'm going to use for these demos is React. React's really quite common. Angular, other frameworks are available. But I love React, to be fair, and I've used React for a lot of these examples. So let me quickly flick back. So let's take the example that we had before and open that up on the left-hand side of this. And then I've got the same app in React here. And it does a bunch of things. So Glue provide a library for React. And what you can do is, it's quite a modern library. It uses React hooks, which are out in 16.8 of React. I'm just going to open up this app wrap. Let me make this a bit bigger. Now I can do that. There we are. Font should be a bit bigger now for people to see. So what I can do is I can create this Glue provider with a factory, which is the Glue. The default is the Glue factory, and I can wrap this provider around app, and what I'll do is it'll provide me a context. And I'm not going to go into context. Context is a React concept, and you can look that up. But it'll provide me a Glue context, which will give me an instance of Glue. That will call wrap up app, and then in app now, what I have access to from the context is this use Glue hook, and what I can do is for any function, I can say use Glue, and with Glue do a thing. So like before, where I was using the APIs to actually call Glue, initialize Glue, and call Glue directly, I can do the same in here, but my instance of Glue is given to me in the function. So I can grab the apps as I did before, applications function, which will give me a list of applications I registered, and I can then pass that to my state. Again, use state is a React thing. I'm not going to cover what that is. So exactly the same app, but in React. Let me, now this is a little bit different. Obviously, if I want to develop a React app, I can't just use live server. what I have to do is spin up my React app the same as I would as if I was developing for web. So if I cd it my React app folder, and I use create React app to get started for a lot of this stuff. It's well worth looking at if you've not looked at React before. Worth a look. What I can do here is do npm start, and what this will do is this will spin up Webpack with dev server installed and serve my React app, and it's going to serve that React app on port 3000. So you can see it popping up there. Chug, chug, chug. Takes a little while to spin up the dev server. There we are, loading. That's great. That's going to fail again though, because I'm running straight on port 3000, and actually what I really need is I need the Glue context. So I've mapped that, and I showed you how to map that before. So let's have a quick look at how I've mapped that in the dev server here. We've basically routed the root of 44 to port 3000, and in here I've registered my app as Mark's React app, and it's at the root of 4242. So if I go back to my window, so I launched app, got that many windows now. I did say I was going to be juggling some windows. I'll find my React window, that one there, and paste this in here. So now I should get, oh yeah, that's great. So I get my React app, but now I'm getting some information. You need to provide auth information. And the reason why this is because I'm not running this within a true Glue environment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to park the Glue core, and I'm going to launch Glue Enterprise. Go back to my slides. We use the framework. So look, one thing Glue Code does really, really well is work with JavaScript. It's open source, so you can go and have a look at it. There's lots of examples there. It's really cool. We've talked about legacy applications, and what we really want to do is want to talk about, see, I've got a .NET application or a Java application or an application on a desktop. How do we start those things up, and how do we get them? So for this, I'm going to go to Glue Enterprise. You can grab the Glue Enterprise trial off their website for a 30-day trial. I'm sure if you reach out to Glue, they'll possibly do something in terms of getting it tested. They're keen to have you on board. So what do I mean by legacy desktop tech? And this slide's, again, my opinion. I'd say that the things on this slide in blue are pretty much still knocking about, and they may be considered legacy, but possibly not. They're reasonably regular, reasonably recent, sorry. The things in orange, I would say, are things that people aren't generally looking at, or I'd consider legacy. Some people wouldn't. I think the things in red are things that we'd all agree are probably legacy. So I'm going to stop switching between slides now and the app, because I think for the next bit, there's that many windows on the screen, it becomes really difficult to do that. So I guess I'm going to do a demo now, which will demo very, very simply Glue42 Enterprise. I'll show you how to configure apps in Glue42 Enterprise for the apps we've just created and other apps. I'm going to show you a little bit about Interop. One thing I love about Glue42 is Interop. It seems really sorted. So I'm going to demonstrate that. And I'm also going to show you some of the dev tools that are available when you're developing in Glue42 Enterprise as well, which I think let's just get rid of this slide and let's hop back to a demo. So let's give an introduction to Glue42 Enterprise first by getting rid of some of the windows off the screen. Let's minimize a lot of these. And what I will do is fire up Glue42. Obviously, I've already installed it. I wouldn't want you to have to sit through that. And so I'll just spin that up. Unfortunately, the splash screen that I've got at the moment appears on another window, and I can't really move that at the moment. So unfortunately, you just have to sit and I'll talk while the splash screen is up. It's setting up windows now, and once that's done, I'll be able to drag some windows onto the other screen so you can see it. Oh, that's not a good thing. Give me 2 seconds. Let me just shut some of this other stuff down. There's always one thing that catches you out when you do live stuff like this. And if you watch my last webinar, you'll be totally familiar with that. Let me with me. With me. Right. Splash screen. This is not great. Oh, my bad, sorry. Sorry for the dead space, everybody. I always do something wrong when I've done this, and basically what I did was before this, in total transparency, before this, what I did was I tested this all before I spoke to you all this morning, and I set up an app store, which is the very, very end part of this, and I didn't remove the app store before I started, which is going to cause problems because the App Store currently isn't running. Therefore, I will need to remove said App Store and add it back in later. Or I'll tell you what I'll do for speed. I will just start up the App Store. Bear with me. Sorry about this. Great. Now let's fire this up and it should just fire up. One of those situations where actually testing your presentation before you give your presentation ruins your presentation. There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. My bad. So Glue42 is now started. You get this nice little welcome screen, which gives you quite a lot of help. When you first started up, you can turn that option off. What we can do is we have a bunch of applications registered in here. So I've marked Say Hi app, marked Simple app. Well, marked Simple app is the one we started before. And I'll need to probably spin that back up again because I shut it down. So let me grab my Simple app. So that, and that's on my React app's actually running. So let's do my React app. It's Mark's React app in the list. Let's do a search. Mark's React app is, there we go. So there we go. Sorry about that. Right. So this is Glue Enterprise now running. And this is my React app that I've just showed you. And I can make this bigger, and I can do list applications. And now you'll see I get all the applications that are currently running in Glue Enterprise. Now, Glue Enterprise, the trial ships with quite a lot of applications. And what we should see is somewhere amongst here. So Mark's Simple app is here. Mark's launched app, Say Hi app. So they're all now running in Glue Enterprise. What I might want to do is I might want to run other applications in Enterprise, which are legacy. So let me quickly flick to Visual Studio proper. I do quite like doing VS Code, but actually the Glue connectors support .NET Framework, C#, .NET Core is coming soon. So what I've done in here is I have built a simple console application, .NET Framework console, there we are. And this console application runs up and it makes itself a Interop target. I said I was going to talk about Interop, so I'm not going to go into what Interop is. This is aimed at a sort of a technical audience, so most of you will know where it is, and it's been around for a long time. C++, C, used to use Interop for interoperation of applications. The way Glue implements Interop or provides Interop is through a NuGet package, and pretty much involves the similar steps to what we said before. So the very first thing I have to do is initialize Glue. So this is a console application. When it first starts up, I call this Glue42 initialize Glue with some options. And again, we give similar options to what we did before. Give my application a name, very original Marks.net framework console app. And you can set some timeouts and some other properties in this in the options. They're all documented on the Glue42 developer documentation, which is actually really very good. Initialize Glue, continue with, and then once I've got my handle to my Glue instance, I can then look at the results and keep that for later. Then what I can do is I can register with Interop. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that Interop's enabled before I try and do anything else. So I call this Interop connection state changed and add a handler for that, so that when the Interop state is changed, I can do some stuff. I know it's enabled or not. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to register a very, very synchronous endpoint called say hi, which takes one parameter, which is a parameter name of type string. So what I've essentially done here is registered this function or method, if you like, with the Glue42 Interop. And when that function is called through Interop, it will call on say hi invoked, which is down here. And it has this sort of signature. I'm not going to go into what these things are, but it's past the invocation context, pretty much like Interop you'd expect. And then what I can do from that is I can see whether there was any arguments passed, and I can pull the name off the arguments. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write a line that says hi with these arguments. That's what I'm going to do. So that's my C application. I'm going to fire that up. So F5 in Visual Studio will give me my console application. And because I've initialized this with Glue, even though it wasn't, haven't added that to Glue Enterprise as an application specifically, but because it's registered against Glue, it will appear in my Glue app search. So if I go here now, I should Marks.net framework console app, which is great. And it should be running somewhere. Here we are. It's down here. Let's drag it on this window. So this doesn't really do much. It's just hanging around at the moment. But what I can do now is I can launch Mark Say Hi app, and Mark Say Hi app will be here. So well, just very, very quick demo of window docking there. So I've docked that into a group. I've also just shook my windows, which has minimized the two, which isn't great. That's a really good Glue feature demonstrated and a really poor Windows feature demonstrated within the space of a few seconds of each other. Let me just grab my console window again. And what I can do here is I can click say hi, and on my console app, you'll see Mark says hi app. It said hi with these arguments, Mark Joes. How did that work? Well, using Interop under the hood, what does the JavaScript using Interop app actually look like? Let me pull this back up, and I can show you that. Let me minimize some windows here because there's quite a lot open. Put my say hi app into my index.html, and you'll see this looks pretty much like the last example I showed you. The very first thing we do is call initialize Glue42, and that function gives it a name, Mark Say Hi app. We wait for it to be initialized. We store Glue for later so we can use it, and we register an event listener on the click button, on click event, which will do two things. It will basically list a table of all of the methods that are available in Interop, and then it will call or invoke say hi with the argument name Mark Joes. And actually we can see where this is working. So let me just change it from Mark Joes to Mark. Let me save that. Because we're in a live server, that's pretty much just an instant update, and I can click on that now, and you'll see in the console window, it's in Mark. It's not that I've hacked something together. It's actually sending that over Interop. So I guess that's Interop. Likewise, you probably wouldn't want to do that in an HTML page. You probably want to do it in React. What does that look like in React? Let me show you. Again, there's two ways you can do this. You can use Glue.int. I showed you the provider pattern before, but actually, if you don't want to use a provider, you can use Glue.init, and it will give you an instance of Glue. I particularly prefer the provider pattern and context. It's how I normally work with React anyway, so it's familiar to me. And say hi to some things. So I'm using Glue again, and exactly the same calls. So Glue interop methods, and then invoke say hi. What we can actually do is this console table. If you want a browser, would write something to the console, but this is not a console. This is running in Glue now. So how do I see what was written to the console? Well, actually, Glue comes with a bunch of tools. While you can't right-click and view developer tools, you can F12 still, and you'll get the developer tools for that window. So let me click say hi again, and you'll see that there you go. Here's my table of all of my interop methods, and all of these are posted. Now that's useful in my app, but actually, what if I just want to keep an eye on all of the interop that's registered? Well, Glue comes with some really cool dev tools. So if I do dev tools in the Glue menu and start dev tools up, gives me this little window here, this little blue window. I'm not going to dock it to anything. And I guess you've got an application monitor in there. It'll show you which applications are currently registered and a bit of information about them, what's currently running. Sorry, not what's running, not what's registered. And also this interop viewer here, which is what I'm really interested in. So if I bring this interop viewer up, and this is going to give me that table that you've just saw in the console window, but actually it's a bit more than that. So if I want to search for marks, you can see that marks.net framework console app here has registered a method called say hi. That's the one we've just used actually, and it takes an optional parameter of name. That's great, I know it exists, but if I click on that, it opens it up in here. And what I really get is this lovely little interface where actually what I can do is I can see from here which servers of that method are running, i.e. marks.net console app up here. And what I can do is it gives me the expected input, so it's self-documenting in that respect. And I can also I can write some JSON in here to pass a parameter. Colin, I'm going to give you a shout out. There you go. Invoke, and invoke method said hi with these arguments. Colin. So basically what I've done there is I've registered, my console app has registered a function. It's a C# app. It could be a WPF app. It could be a WinForms app. It could be Java. It could be anything else. And Interop seems really, really sorted in the Glue42. I guess one last thing. In order to configure these applications, how did I get them to appear in this menu? And I must admit, when I first started with Glue42, I found this a little bit clunky because the pattern is to essentially go into the Glue42, update a local tick42 Glue42 config into apps, and in here what I have is an SL webinar 1 JSON file, which if I open that up, you'll see actually registers these apps, so it tells a bit of information and a bit of manifests about which apps are there and how they're available. And that's great, it works, but actually that's not really what I want to do. And this is where my startup of Glue42 issues actually happened. Because what I really want to do is I want an app directory, and Glue42 is FTC3 standards compliant. I'll talk a little bit about what FTC3 is in a second, but it does actually honor the app directory specification. So what you can actually do, and the thing I had to jump in and start just to get it to work before, apologies that this is all out of sequence, was a very, very simple little Node server that I wrote. So I'm not going to cover Node. I'm not going to cover Express, but I will say that Express is a very, very quick way of getting Node application or web server up and running. So what I have here is a very, very simple Express app, which basically listens on port 1234 and registers some endpoints. And this endpoint is v1 app search, is an FTC3 compliant endpoint that serves out literally this applications array, which is hard coded. And basically this is Mark's Rainbow Colors application. I'll show you in a second. It's great, you'll love it. And what I can then do is, rather than actually have to register every app with Glue42, I can serve my apps from that server, because that's essentially what it is. It's a local web server. It could be a remote web server. It could be a web server within your organization. And what I can then do is, where I register my app here, instead of registering here, I can, in my config, I can then go to my system.json. And in here, which I was looking at before when I was trying to fix it, you got a bit of a brief preview. There is an app stores array, and in here what I can do is I can say register a RESTful app store, give it the URL, and I can give it some other parameters. So I don't want to authenticate; it's not an authenticated URL, and I want the Glue42 app registry to pull that every 30 seconds. So because that's been running for a little while, and I go into here, I should be able to, if I do Mark. So Mark's Rainbow Colors was never added in the but it's pulled that information, and if I spin that up, there you go, my fabulous rainbow colors app. That brings me to, I guess, the end of this. I quickly want to jump back to my slides because there's one other thing I promised that I'd mention, or I said I'd mention, and that was FDC3. So Finos and FDC3 are looking at, are basically championing open source within the financial markets, and FDC3 working group is something that I like to think I've been a part of, and they're trying to set the working group's trying to set standards for. Well, here's the mission statement. The mission of FDC3 is to develop specific protocols and taxonomies to, I can never say that word, taxonomy, to advance the ability of desktop applications in financial workflows to interoperate in a plug-and-play fashion without prior bilateral agreements. And a perfect example of that is that app directory standard that you've just seen there. The manifest can be specific to Glue42 or any other vendor, but actually the encompassing metadata is actually a standard across the board, and that's really helpful. Great, that's me. If Claire's knocking about somewhere, I'm sure Claire's going to jump in at this point, but join me on the 12th of August, I would say. And any questions?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that, Mark. And just before we go to the Q&A, in fact, you've got a minute or so to get your questions in, so please do pop them into the question box while I just tell you quickly about the next one in this series. So Mark's doing almost a mini series for us within these other related webinars that we're doing on desktop containers. So last one that Mark looked at was building desktop applications with OpenFin. Today obviously was Glue42, and next time it's the turn of Finsomble. So I hope that you can join us for that one on the 12th of August. I have put the link to register into the chat box, and I've actually just put another link into your chat box as well, which is that link at the bottom of the page there, where you can watch all of the previous recordings, including one that Colin did for us that kick-started this whole series. And you'll get advance notice of the ones that are coming up next. And you can also request a copy of Colin's white paper on that page as well. So let's have a look at the questions that are coming through. First question, can you interop with Java applications?
Yes, is the simple answer. Yeah, Interop's provided for a number of languages, a number of legacy application types. I would say the Glue42 developer pages have some really good examples, and actually for each of the different language styles, there's links to repos of really good examples of that. So yes, you can.
Great stuff. I've got another one here that says progressive web apps sound interesting. I thought that was a mobile technology. What does it mean to a desktop app developer? Who wants to take that one?
Colin. I think there's a plug there as well, Colin. I think you're muted, but there's a plug there as well, I think, Colin, at some point.
Well, by the way you chuckled, surely it should be you that takes that one, Mark.
Okay, so yes, they are the feature in my mind. I think a while ago, Chris Price, who's one of our solutions architects here, did a talk at FinJS entitled, I think it was called "The Death of the App Store" or something like that, and it alluded to the future as progressive web apps and be able to grab an app through your browser on the desktop and just run it, and without all of the browser gubbins. I think it's great. I certainly think for mobile devices they're becoming more and more popular, even though a certain vendor that has a symbol of a fruit may be trying to clamp down on that in their app store. But that sort of yeah, progressive apps are big in mobile. My prediction for the future is they're going to be bigger on the desktop. The Glue42 product definitely targets progressive web apps. When you look at their core offering, it's very targeted towards progressive web apps. Chrome tends to handle them quite well. Some of the other browsers don't so much at the moment, but it's getting better, the support for them. So yes, and yeah, the future. Legacy will always be a thing. Some people will always just want to write their own application. Native is always a thing. I mean, there's benefits of native. I'm not going to cover the benefits of both, but yeah, progressive web apps are the future.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence of that one. I think it is a future, but there are multiple futures. It's definitely a clean and simple way of running applications on the desktop that are written using web technologies. There's no denying that. However, we have seen a lot more applications that were traditionally considered desktop applications moved into the web browser. So it's targeting a technology area that's diminishing in size. So I certainly think it will have a future. It's just questionable how big a future that will be.
I agree with that. I think so for me, for PWAs is not the what's inside of the window that's important. I think that will continue to evolve with web tech. Like, I mean, I could see in the future where you have a PWA which all it really does is launch some WebAssembly or something, and it feels a bit more native. But I think the bundling up of an application in some standardized form, i.e., which like with a manifest file and service worker and that sort of stuff, the whole concept of a background thing, a UI thing, and something that brings them together into a package, even if it's not PWA as it is now, is definitely a future thing.
Yeah, I agree. And the only PWA I use on a desktop is Outlook, but that's fairly significant because it's probably one of my most frequently used applications.
Yeah.
I initially started using the web version of Outlook because actually it seems to be a lot better than the desktop version these days. It starts up a lot more quickly. It tends to be a little bit more feature rich, and the PWA version, as you can imagine, is effectively exactly the same thing, but without the browser Chrome.
Yeah, agreed. Actually, my local Outlook app doesn't work well, doesn't play well with MS Teams either, so I do use the app version.
Oh, you use the PWA version, do you?
I use the PWA version, yeah, because the actual the native application doesn't play well with MS Teams at all. Not on my machine anyway.
Cool.
Fantastic. I think that's about all we've got time for today. So that just leaves me to say thank you so much to Mark and Colin for today's webinar. Like I say, do click on that link in the chat box and check out the other webinars in this series, and also Colin's white paper. But hopefully we'll see you on the next webinar. But until then, enjoy the rest of your day.